voice is catching.
Go ahead.
So, welcome back to the show. We're here at New to Hill Country. We're here with Connor Dillon, and Connor's going to talk about some fun stuff like literally sword fighting in the park. Talk about some media production and any number of other things that we get to. Just before we roll into it, just quick nod, hat tip to our sponsors, SBG Texas. Come here to train safe, train smart, train fun. Got a great adult program, got a great kids program. I think most people when they come in my gym, particularly on the adult end, it's like, oh, that's how I wanted to learn. You know, like that's one of the most common kind of expressions I get from people is like, I didn't want to get beat up to learn. I actually wanted to just learn it, you know, and
actually learn it,
right?
Not figuring out.
And I mean, the other big responses is like, wow, that really works because they felt it firsthand. And they actually see it. You know, they don't have to believe it. Like, trust me, this will actually work. And you're like, I don't know. All we did was kick a pad, like, but
on top of all that, we have a great community that it's been really just life-changing and life-fulfilling. You know, it's really awesome to be part of something great. I know New Braunfels is all about community and helping each other, and I think we are kind of moving in that direction pretty clearly, so that's awesome.
Get the kids onto new behaviors, better behaviors on top of learning how to kick some butt. You know, they actually get that discipline in there, get them to be more confident. It's been pretty, I find the kids teaching to be really rewarding in that regard. Just the stuff that parents say to us, I'm kind of always blown away by the feedback that we get. Like, it's been this total change since they started, and we're like, wow, really? Like, you sure they weren't doing something else too on the side that I didn't know about? Like, and it feels, because I find it hard to take so much credit sometimes for some of the things that our parents say, but I trust that because they say it. I mean, not like solicited or anything. We've also got Element electrolyte mix, just such a game changer. We sell it here. Just you put it in a bottle of water and hits those hydration needs in a way that most people have really barely ever experienced. Like Kaylee, you've felt it now too. Just how often do you complain about having a headache? You know what I mean? Like, remember I was just like all the time was like headache. And that's how I felt too. It's like, I was talking about this with one of our gym members, Mitchell, and it's like, he just thought it was a normal crappy day. And it's like, you pop an Element and it's like, wait a minute, it was just this electrolyte imbalance or whatever. Now I feel good. Like,
and also, like, we all know that we need to drink a lot of water, but it's some sort of a work. Like, I have to remind myself to drink. It's not really fun, whereas Elements really solves that problem. You want to drink that, kind of like, just like you want to drink coffee, you want to drink those tasty drinks that is actually good for you. So it's been really great.
It tastes stupid good. It's a little addictive, but
All right.
Well, anyways, Connor, welcome to the show.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you guys for having me.
How did you make it to this part of Texas? And were you always here? Or tell whatever story. Yeah.
Oh, that's a fun story. That goes back a few years now. Actually, almost 14 years now. So originally, don't hold this against me if you're born and bred Texas, but I was born in California.
Oh my God!
Oh,
yeah.
no.
All right, maybe we need to stop this podcast. Like, I didn't realize.
Well, the good news is after 3 months, my parents moved to Tennessee. So
okay, whew,
yeah,
whew, didn't get all that California in you.
Yeah, I know, right?
It's just crazy because some of my favorite people are Californians, but
yeah.
And you're not the first one. Quite a lot of people were talking about, actually, we are from California.
I know when I first moved here from Tennessee, and again, this was 2007. My dad was running a company, and he was doing 2 weeks in Texas and then 2 weeks at home. And so just about half of the year, we didn't see him. And that was straight on finances and stuff like that. And so wound up sitting down and they're like, okay, we're either going to do this for another year, your brother will graduate high school, or we can go now. All right, and that was basically the option. So I had a family meeting. Obviously, we voted, but how much my vote counted, I don't know. But we voted and we wound up moving here. And we wound up moving here in August of 2007. Okay. 2 weeks before my freshman year of high school, and we were able to get a crappy house in the Navarro School District. And when I say crappy house, it was a house built in the 50s. It was renovated in I think the late 90s. Mm-hmm. And my room, which I shared with two of my brothers, was a renovated garage. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there was any insulation. Oh, no. So in the winter, I had to have, there was like a single 6-inch vent. I had to have like 4 blankets on me. So it was an interesting experience. The most life-changing thing about that was actually the sound, because this house was out in the middle of nowhere. And I grew up in, honestly, it was the projects, and I grew up there, and so I was used to very loud booms, just noises going off almost 24/7, like window shaking because an SUV drove too close to my house. And I moved out there quiet. And I actually had a seriously difficult time going to sleep. So that was interesting. Anyway, so went to high school in Navarro. I graduated.
I'll pause you for a second. Yeah. That's kind of an interesting experience for me. Is like, just you said like you're in the projects basically. You're like in the ghetto area. So like when I was growing up in Dubuque, Iowa, there was a point where they started moving a lot of people from the south side of Chicago to Dubuque, Iowa, where I'm from. And it was a diversity effort and stuff like that. So most of these families were black, right? And a lot of these guys were coming from like, I got to know a lot of them. Just they ended up being my friends in high school and stuff like that. And it was so fast. What was always so fascinating to me is like, and not to get into a big racial discussion or whatever, but very typically you've got a lot of white people that are typically afraid of black people from an urban environment, right? Yeah. And they're like, and what was really funny getting to know these guys is how afraid they were of white people. And, like, how afraid they were in particular of, like, they were so, like, panicky, almost scared about countryside stuff. And I'd be like, they would tell you a story that would, like, make your hair stand on end. You'd be like, oh my God. Like, that is a war zone story. Like, you'd just be like, you survived that? And it's like, yeah, that stuff would happen all the time. And you're like, happen all the time? Like guns popping, and you're like, and maybe there's some exaggeration there. I don't know.
July is always
but you're just like, holiday. Oh my God, that's terrifying. And then they'd be like, but they would be scared of like really things that were super common to me. And it always it always stayed with me, like when you like perceive some area to be like scary, and then it's like people from that area might find your area scary, sort of, like in reverse, like you're like, I don't know. So that just I would always just find that so interesting. Like they were so terrified sometimes of just very little things that like I wouldn't have thought were trouble or something, like or, just even like a school being fairly structured was like, this is like claustrophobic level uncomfortable for me, like that. It was very challenging for them, that environment, which was far more peaceful, like you're describing. Like it's so much more peaceful than what they came from, but like, and then most of them would adjust over time. That's the great thing about human beings, they just adjust to things. But just imagining that, like, you went from this loud city street, which shouldn't help you sleep, to like quiet, and it's like, oh my God, it's too quiet. I can't. Like, and your brain can't handle it. Just,
oh God,
the body adapts. It
was definitely an interesting experience, and I don't know how my brothers dealt with it. For me, I wound up actually like I took a floor fan and I plugged it in and I turned a floor fan on, and that was what I would do. And so in wintertime, I would have a fan going and it would be blowing on me. So it being cold outside and cold in my room, I'd have 4 blankets and a fan blowing on me just so I could go to sleep. And there were definitely different things that, I like experience-wise that was very, very, very different for me. Like where I grew up, and that school didn't have football, right? So like football was a big thing, but the school was so small. It was a K through 12, 500 students.
I see.
Right? Wow. And I moved to a high school, 9th to 12th grade, that was 500 students. Right? And so like for me, like it was really strange because I was seeing more people who were closer to me in age. But just weird experiential thing. But over there in Chattanooga, basketball was the big thing. People would talk football. People would talk about all these great touchdowns, the Patriots this, the Tennessee Titans that. But the reality was everyone was more interested in basketball. Well, for me, when I moved here, basketball was a thing as a sport, but I'm sure, as you guys may have already experienced, but like football is the thing.
Kind of noticed that.
Yeah.
Tackle football in grade school. Like second grade.
Yeah, and I'll say something here that will probably infuriate people, and I'm fine with saying this, but I don't think tackle football should happen until you're at least 17. And frankly, like, I would say 18, but this is Texas, so I'm sure, someone underage has to be able to hit someone in pads. So that was something that I saw. Like, I had friends that were in high school that they played JV and then they started playing varsity, and just between the workouts that they did and the actual playing, like, one guy, he had to have, and he was like the one of the star athletes. He did not play football after high school because of the injuries that he sustained.
Oh, totally.
Right,
yeah.
so like he tore an ACL. His hip, he actually had to have like a full hip replacement, not because it broke, but just because of something mechanically had worn down from him because he was a kicker. Another friend, he had shot both of his knees basically and worn down, so there's hardly any cartilage. Like, just these horrific injuries, and I'm
from
like,
a high school game.
From high school.
Yeah, I know.
And like, for me, I'm sitting here going like, man, like, I could not imagine letting my kid do something like that and then setting them up for a lifetime of pain and, I don't want to say misery, but definitely pain.
Sure.
Right? Like, the arthritis when you're 30 is not fun.
No.
So I'm sure someone's going to try and find me and tell me football is great.
No, I mean, yeah, football is king for so many people. I personally I'm not a big sports fan, so that's an issue right there. And yeah, I just but yeah, I just can't want someone, like, even just the way I train martial arts, I'm like, it's great to be good, it's even great to compete, but if competition is like ruining your body, I can't imagine. For me, unless we're talking about $1 million, like, if you're in the NFL, I get it.
Yeah.
I would take the concussions for those
multi-million
paychecks.
dollar annually.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, we were watching the Conor fight on Saturday, and he lost. But it's like, and people were talking about, oh, Jake Paul wants to fight him, he'll get beat. I was like, dude, I would do that too if I was Jake Paul. Like, I'll fight Conor and Mayweather at the same time for a multi-million-dollar fight. Like,
you mean I can walk away with $20 million, $50 million? Yeah, I'll do it.
But if you're, like, I see guys want to go out and compete in like these little like MMA things on a grass field or something on YouTube, street beefs or something, which I honestly enjoy watching. But it's like, why would you do that to yourself? Like, I'm gonna go fight on a dirt field. There's no way they're not insuring you. Like, any number of things could be broken. Like, you're gonna be so mangled up for what? Oh, I won on street beefs, y'all. Like, it's like, whoopity doo.
What does that actually do for you?
Even try to pick up a girl with that. Hey, I want to fight on YouTube.
Yeah.
Great.
Whatever. Lots of people.
Right. Like, but anyways.
Yeah. That is a really, really great point. And I didn't have my fair share of street fights. I actually I don't want to say I've never been in a fight, but I've probably never been in a fight.
Which is good.
Yeah, which is I'm glad, right? It probably would not turn out. I don't want to say it wouldn't turn out well for me, but it would not be a great experience for anyone. So that coming here and then seeing all this stuff with football, that was a huge thing. And since then, I've stayed around. I went to Texas Lutheran University, graduated, and got a job with, and this is going to sound horrible, I'm sure, to some people, but I did get a job with my parents' company. I got hired because of my last name. I kept the job because of hard work. Cool. Right? Like, I have to be very specific about that.
I met your dad. He works hard. I can see it. Like, he doesn't strike me as an easy person to work for. He's going to push people. Like,
so he, the job interview was, look, we've got a position here. It's yours if you want it, but if you want to keep it after you graduate, you have to go through a workshop and get this certification. Sure. And that was the requirement. Well, I graduated. A month later, I got married. A month later, I went through this workshop. At the end of the workshop, I had to be proctored off-site to reduce any kind of ethical thing. So I was being proctored in New Braunfels by a librarian. And I actually failed the test. I missed. I was off by one question to meet the pass-fail threshold, and I went back to the office. And that literally, like, I just got married. I graduated college, had no other prospects, and I had to pass this test to keep my job. And I was like, well, I guess I could go back and work at HEB. Well, thank God my dad did have grace for me. And he's like, look, tell me what 2 problems, right? That was his thing. What were the 2 problems that you got stuck on? And I like racked through my brain. And I was like, these were the 2 things. I just blanked on it. I couldn't find anything in my notes for it. And these were the 2 problems. Worked through it. He's like, he gave me a couple more problems that were like those, worked through it, and he's like, we'll set you up for another test. If you pass it, no harm, no foul. And I thankfully, I passed the test at that point. And since then, I've gotten a few other certifications. So I'm a HERS rater, resident instructor, resident quality assurance designee, but I'm also a John C. Maxwell certified speaker, trainer, and coach. I'm licensed to teach curriculum that he's developed over the years. And if you've never heard of John C. Maxwell, I don't blame you. But he is considered by a fair few people to be one of the leading experts of leadership. Cool. He's written for lots of books, probably close to 80 now, I think. Oh, wow. And he's been around for quite a while. So since then, that's what's happened. Obviously, I stayed around. I was bouncing back and forth between New Braunfels and Seguin at apartments, chasing kind of, apartment prices because, it's expensive to live, apparently. Something you never think about when you're a kid. So we bounced back and forth, and finally we were able to get a house in New Braunfels. It was already in a developed neighborhood. Neighbors are older, so we don't really have, loud noises or anything. And, now I've got 2 kids and a wife, and, it's great being here for us. Proximity to family is fantastic. We both, obviously, my parents are still in the area. Her parents and her siblings, for the most part, are in this area. Wow. So we got great proximity to family. We have some fantastic natural resources available. The parks, for the most part, are fantastic. And there's these little gyms that you'll find, like Morningside Drive Park. It actually has like an all abilities playground there.
Where's that?
It's actually on Morningside Drive. So if you
Morningside Drive.
It's south, like you're heading to San Antonio. So if you take the exit for Loop 337, like you're heading south on 35. But instead of turning right on 337, like you're going to go 46 to Bernie or something like that, if you turn left and you go down that road until you hit the T, you turn right.
Okay.
And that is Morningside Drive. When you turn right, you're going to pass by the Greater Humane Society of New Braunfels. And then down a couple hills, you're going to actually see the playground. It's next to one of the schools. I think it's EHMS, but I can't remember. And maybe I could be wrong, but yeah. It's down in that direction. It's nice. It's backed up against a wooded area, so they actually have, I think it's like a half-mile long loop that you can go through and go around. And so you get access to some trees and stuff like that. Cool.
We should check this out.
It's very, very fun. And playground-wise, they've got 2 playgrounds and a set of swings. One's an all-ability playground. My son loves to go around on that. They've got some really, really fun slides and stuff. Then they've got another that has the old wood chip grounding, and it's fantastic. And he likes going on there, though he did almost fall off the slide.
He's falling off the slide? Shocking.
Well, yeah, it was almost a 10-foot drop. But,
one of my more...
It was fun.
And I could tell stories upon stories of playground accidents in Korea.
Scary moments.
One of the worst ones was I was in Korea, and I don't know, Lauren was probably 4-ish, I would guess. I'm at the top of the slide encouraging her to go down. Yeah. And I'm like, you're just going to go down, just make your body long and go down. Like, she wouldn't go down. Like, it'll be okay. She goes down at the bottom, hits her feet, and does like a flip. And like lands on her face and then rolls, and she had like this big cut on her face or whatever. I just felt so horrible. And she was okay within a short period of time, but I just was like, I mean, it was just like, as I saw it going wrong, it was so far out of reach.
Yeah,
and you're
you
like,
couldn't.
there's nothing you can do. Like, you can't move through that much matter and time and space. Like, and just that feeling of helplessness, I can still feel it in my heart when I think about it. But,
Yeah, I had a similar thing happen with my son. We were playing at Landa Park, and they've got the little fire truck thing, and he loves playing on the fire truck and spinning both of the wheels and all that. Well, he goes to run around the swing set to get to the other one, to one of the other playgrounds that has the big kind of rock mountain thing that kids love climbing over. Well, we had to get him new shoes, and we hadn't been able to run to the store and get them yet. And so his shoes were a little too small, and that was impeding how he was running. And he actually fell. And so he was running, he fell, and he did like the full like loop parabola. So he and smacked his head on the concrete.
Oh man!
And like I saw it happen. I was like, don't chase him. Don't let him run. He went, and hit his head. Thank God it wasn't close to the edge. It was towards the center of the walkway, and he had turned his head at the last second, and so he got a big hematoma on his head. And we were like, he's obviously screaming and crying and stuff. There's not blood anywhere, but it immediately swelling. And I always feel bad because we were joking afterwards about a week later because we needed to get him a haircut. Every single time that we've gone and gotten him a haircut, he's always had bruises on his face from something where he's just fallen and he's hit his head on something, or like I'm not over here beating my kid. He's literally just tripping on the playground and hitting a pole or something.
Yeah, sure, buddy.
Yeah.
Sure, buddy.
Yeah, and so we were laughing about that. We got him a haircut, and then afterwards we were like, has he ever gone in and gotten a haircut without having bruises? And we were just, I can't remember. But yeah, there's lots of really, really great things about this area for us to take the kids to. And obviously, COVID has been a bit of an issue and a downer for things. And our kids aren't quite old enough to like go tubing the river and things like that. We were able, we have membership with DOS Rec, so we were able to get Gideon when he was about 1 through a swim lesson.
Nice.
So he does like going into the pool. He does like the water. We'll see when we can do that for our daughter. But and DOS Rec was it's a great gym membership for the value for what you get, because you get for us we got a family membership pack, and it's very inexpensive. You get access to pool, basketball courts, and indoor pool, indoor basketball courts, cardio area, free weights and machines.
Cool.
And for the value, it's really, really good. So I'm happy that New Braunfels, and I will probably upset someone.
Me.
Well, I'm happy that New Braunfels invested in that, because it is a really good feature, and there are day passes and things like that you can do. But like for working out and lifting weights and stuff, it's not bad. Obviously there are like more specialized places, so you could go to American Fitness. There's some places off of 337 on the south side that they actually do like strongman training and things like that. And so, which that's a whole nother thing. We were talking about sports. I like strongman competition, but a completely different direction. So yeah, we found a lot of value for what we've gotten in this area.
Speaking of sports,
Uh-oh.
what about how you got into your particular hobby? Like, so
Sword fight.
Yeah, sword fighting. So
which I've done with him. Well, I'll talk about my experience with it as we go. But
yeah. So for me, when actually the year before we moved to Texas, my parents had, we had been watching Pirates of the Caribbean, and we're like, yeah, sword fighting, that's so cool. And my dad had done some research, and there wasn't a big, there weren't like big modern Olympic fencing clubs there in Chattanooga or anything that we could do at the time. But a rec center had a teacher who was offering classical fencing.
Okay.
Now, the big distinction between the two is modern Olympic fencing uses electronic scoring, so there's a wire that goes from the tip of the sword through the hand, that goes to through the mask, through the jacket, comes out the back, and it connects to a scoring machine. So at the end, if it gets depressed, as you poke someone in the face, or their mask specifically, a light will go off, right? and that's how they determine the victor. And there's other rules,
I
but
didn't know that.
classical fencing, they don't have the electronic scoring, so this is stuff that's like basically pre-50s, well, maybe pre-60s.
Just gonna go till first blood.
I wish. No. I joke about that. There are people that do that, but so the classical fencing actually, it's basically the divergence. So modern Olympic fencing took the electronic scoring, I want to say in like the 60s and 70s. Classical fencing basically tries to keep it the way it was before electronic scoring. And so it still relies a lot on the rules of engagement that they have, like right away for the foil and things like that, and having specific human judges there that are watching the actions take place. And yeah, you do see some people, they'll do a bit of it is to like kind of a first blood thing. That it's not as popular, but they actually have these special tips that have like 4 prongs, and you'll fence, and it's not deep enough that it's like you're getting stabbed by a needle, but it's enough that it'll draw blood.
Oh wow!
And so they'll do a fencing thing. And it's first person that you can see blood. Again, not incredibly popular. I would not recommend that, and unless you have some experience already.
I feel like I'm ready. I watch Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, you watch it, 20, 30 times. You'll
pretty sure Orlando Bloom, everything he did is right on point. So.
I mean, especially him fighting a squid face guy. Like that was history, right?
How could you not draw, like proper conclusions from that? Proper technique.
I don't know. And so we did classical fencing for a year. Moved here. The closest fencing clubs that were offering public training were too far from us at the time, and so I just kind of let it slide. And then eventually, when I was a teenager, I was a teenager, but when I was about 15, 16, we finally got like a cable package that let us watch like Spike TV, and so we started watching UFC more and other MMA. So I was watching Bellator and things like that, and eventually I started like getting on YouTube and watching Pride, and then I was watching all sorts of other like esoteric things. So I was really started getting into martial arts a lot then. Even through college, I wound up running a podcast for about a year. That for at least half of that was sponsored by Alienware, which is a crazy situation. And around like I guess 2014, maybe it was 2013. One of my favorite online karate magazines, I say that it's bloodyelbow.com.
Oh, I read Bloody Elbow.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So they posted some articles, and my thing that I always loved was reading the history of how these arts developed and the interactions between cultures.
Yeah, Bloody Elbow is like surprisingly good for its name, but yeah,
it is.
Yeah,
yes.
They go fairly in depth on a few things, and it's like that's why I like them. Is every now and then they'll have those in depth articles that you're describing. Yes. There's the day to day, but then every now and then it'll be this really deep look at something, and it's like they actually do their homework. Like it's a well researched thing. You're like. You're like, damn, I didn't know that.
Yes, so. And so I would like spend way too many hours a day reading things, and then like they posted this article, and it was like the ancient longsword, European longsword. I was like, what? That's cool. It's like, and they were talking about the manuals, and then they were like dropped in videos of people hitting each other with swords, and I was like, oh, this is a thing. And ever since then, I had it in the back of my head. And I started reaching out to people who were in that community, and I was talking to people, trying to figure out how could I get involved, how could I start picking it up. And nothing really worked out until a guy commented in a group, and it was kind of serendipitous because I literally joined that group that day, right? And he commented in a group and said, hey, I just moved to New Braunfels. Does anyone want to, meet up and train? I was like, well, I was living in Saginaw at the time. I was like, I'm down the road. I'm down to do this, right? So they get kind of awkward situation. Let me meet someone face to face in a public setting to make sure if I'm getting kidnapped, I can scream loudly enough that someone else will be in the area. Luckily, it didn't work out that way. He was a great guy, fantastic, and that was when I really first started getting into it. Within a year, I had bought a sword. I bought the manual that we were studying from. And I don't want to say, the rest is history, because there's all sorts of stuff that's happened since then. But yeah, basically since then I've continued to buy swords. I've gotten into other things. So there's the longsword, obviously, but I have a side sword, which is a proto rapier. So you know, if you guys have ever seen Zorro. Zorro has a rapier, and that's basically how it is. I've gotten into sabers. I've gotten into all sorts of really, really fun things.
What was it that we used the one night? We had the bucklers.
Yeah, so
those
sword and bucklers.
little bitty shields or whatever.
Yeah.
What was the sword then? Was that a saber?
That was an arming sword.
I just don't remember. I know we had a smaller sword than those big long sword. You could never work that one-handed. Like, forget that.
There's some that you could, like, I actually just got one late last year as a Christmas bonus that it is short. It's longer than the ones that you were talking about for sword and buckler, but it's weighted in such a way that you absolutely can. Of course, it's got a longer handle, so, you know, that's a bit of an issue. But yeah, sword and buckler as well, which is, again, like, there's all these different weapon systems that people have written about for hundreds of years. Sadly, World War I killed a lot of them. And so there's been a lot of people who've been trying to reconstruct it to the point where basically the modern, what they call historical European martial arts movement, honestly, or HEMA, it is more of like a more reconstructionist in nature, because there's not a living lineage. Everyone who learned how to do that has died.
Right.
And they didn't pass it down, right? So it's not like judo or jiu-jitsu or Brazilian jiu-jitsu where you've got this living lineage, right? Like, you've got people now who can say, well, I trained under, Hickson, who trained under
Haleo, basically,
who trained under Count Maida, right? And Takano, right? And and you could go even further back, right? You don't have that. Just a lot of them died in World War I, and a lot of them afterwards just were not physically capable to train. And so I'm going to say that's a very American-centric thing. I'm sure there are some people who, in Italy, for instance, that they say that they've continued to practice like destrezza or something like that, and I'm sure I'm probably using the wrong language for that because people they get very uppity about that. But there are some people who claim to have living lineages. I don't know the veracity of that, but on my side, like, it's just reconstruction.
Sure.
And cool thing, there's lots of tournaments that take place, at least, when there's not a global pandemic going on. Yeah, it's pretty fun. I've competed at a couple tournaments. I've done okay. I'm not the best tool in the shed by any means, but I'm competent, I would say. I'd argue that's the most important thing.
I found it a lot of fun. Now I'm like always running the gym, so finding the time to jump off to do stuff like that. And especially I don't favor a lot of extra hobbies that use my body too much, just because that's like my body's a little maxed out with all the coaching responsibilities. And but it was super fun. It was for me, reminded me a lot of boxing, which I've done a fair amount of. Like, boxing has that. So in jiu-jitsu, there are no feints. Like, in jiu-jitsu, everything I do it has to be a credible threat to garner a reaction. And then when you go to boxing, there's all this feinting that you can do, which is a lot of fun. And I felt like going up the swords, it was that extra level of feinting because you're even further away now to where, like, if I make a move to the right, by the time you move in response to that, if I can come back around to the left, it's quite an advantageous situation. That's one of the things I always enjoyed about boxing is that, like, you can feint. In jiu-jitsu, there's a lot of beginners will feint and they think that'll work. It doesn't work. So people are just too close. The level of reaction is never much enough. Threats should be credible. And I am just doing that thing. I just have a response to your response, basically. But yeah, once you're back out at that big range, you're getting back into that feinting game, and there's just a lot of, like boxing, it's like you could be pretty experienced and do a right move, but still get hit by someone being quick or being wrong, or just, it's a big blade coming at you. Like, it's...
And there's so much that goes into that too, and... especially when we talk feinting, because one of my favorite, I'll just say, combos that I've ever seen was this one where a guy came in with a horizontal strike and he was crossing his arms, right? Now, this is called a spherical. So they cross their arms, and it's a horizontal strike, and they're usually trying to hit people in the side of their head, right? That's the idea. Well, the common thing is to do what they call a sphericopter. So you do one, someone responds to it, and you just keep twisting and untwisting your arms until you hit them, right? And so they joke, it's a sphericopter. Well, this guy, it's so ingrained in people that the response is, okay, they're going to do this, so I've got to immediately do this, and then I'll be able to counter.
Okay.
Well, this guy he goes for the spherical. The guy stops it, and he shifts immediately to the other side because he knows, it's a sphericopter, the guy's going to hit me. And the guy had started bringing his sword back, right? So it looked, by all means and intents, that he was going to finish and keep doing the copter. Well, then he cut normally at a horizontal without crossing his arms on the same side that he had initially attacked at, and got the guy in his torso. And you see those kinds of feinting combos like that, and I was just like, I watched that and I'm like, God, I wish I could do that. It's like, that was so beautiful. The timing was perfect. Wow. And there's some very, very impressive stuff that people can do. And honestly, it's still really young, I would say. So like MMA back in the 90s, right? Yeah. That's about where I would say it is.
Sure.
You've got people who will stick to certain disciplines, or they'll pull things from others, and you're kind of starting to see some people melding things. But a lot of people are still very much, it's still a stylistic kind of thing, in my opinion. And I'm sure if any of my HEMA friends listen to this, they'll, I'll get a bunch of angry messages. So I don't care.
Where do you practice? And also, if there's anybody who's listening who's interested, how can they go about it?
So we've been blessed to get connected with Sporthalle NB, and local CrossFit gym right off of Walnut. Fantastic location. And so we're going to be training there Tuesdays, once a week, 7 to 9 p.m. Has to be that late because of my son. And he likes swords, and so I'll take him with me. Nice. But we'll be practicing once a week, 7 to 9. We were formerly known as New Braunfels Historical Fencing Club. The other thing that COVID has brought on was like expenses rack up and some things get cut down. So I was able to partner with a friend of mine from Austin who runs Academy of Western Martial Arts. And so if you look online, I believe the website's academyofwma.com. The New Braunfels location, Sporthalle NB, Tuesdays 7 to 9, starting February 2nd. I can't guarantee that you'll be able to hit people first day with steel swords because we like to make sure people are competent before we start putting them in potentially dangerous situations. But
same logic here, right?
Yeah, exactly. I've been in a place before where someone who should not have had a sword and it hurt someone.
Shocking.
Surprise, right? So competence matters is what I'll say. So that we'll start practice here pretty soon, next week actually. And I'm really stoked about that. I've gotten some more gear while COVID has been a thing, and I can't wait to put it on and start playing around and have some good time. And if you don't want to, if you want to send an email, I've got the email newbraunfels@academyofwma.com.
We'll put those links all in. We'll put it all in the show notes and everything.
Sounds really fun.
Yeah, and by all means, right, you guys are welcome. I know that class runs
I think the time
late.
is always fun stuff always happens in the evening, and that's where we're teaching. But if you guys have an off day, or definitely feel free to come by. It's really fun, and obviously minimally I'd like to watch.
Oh yeah,
it does look it seems really fun.
It is, and I'm sure that you guys can attest to this when it comes to like jiu-jitsu. Like the more you know about something, the more excited you get when you watch that thing.
Right.
And once you start to pick up some of the things that are going on, you're like, oh, he's doing this, or she's doing that, and it's great.
Although I have sorry.
That was my recent experience with watching MMA. I was talking to him the other day, just not the recent fight with Connor, but the previous fights that we watched with it was between two women fighters. And
was it Sarah McMahon and
do you remember?
Was it a different fight card?
It was a different fight card.
I don't
prior.
remember the name, but I remember exactly one woman just like took the back, like using exactly the technique that we were actually teaching our kids and everything that week, and then just like did the rear naked choke.
Or also just remember watching UFC. I showed Kaylee UFC 1 recently.
Right.
Like straight out of our gym. Like
Right.
when you're seeing just that pure jiu-jitsu against other, which essentially they're fighting untrained people. Like they're trained in a different discipline, but at that time none of those guys knew anything about jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So you just see that King's game every single time. Takedown, pass to mount, submission from mount, but the guy rolls over, rear naked choke. And that's like 95% of the Gracie challenge matches is when you face someone that doesn't know what's going on. That's what just plays out almost every single time. Like those people are entering a whole new world, and they have no defenses for any of it. Like it just, if you've never seen it before, especially like jiu-jitsu is like completely like a tornado coming through you. Like so there's no Do you feel like watching sword fighting in a movie now is like, has it been ruined for you because of all of it?
So to a degree, it's actually interesting because my diploma that I got from the university is actually dramatic media, so it's a combination of theater and film. So I am a student of the arts, as some people like to say. So I can appreciate a good sword fight, even if it's absolutely like completely not martially sound.
Sure.
There are certain things that will irritate me about stuff that I see, but I haven't outside of one thing, I haven't like gone, what the hell were they doing over there? Pardon my language. But yeah, there's, for the most part, I look at that and I go, it's to tell a story, right? And if they tell a story well, then I don't care.
Sure. No, I totally get
it's
what
not
you mean.
about accuracy
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, admittedly, there are definitely like movies where it's just, here's a sword fight and it doesn't do anything outside of these characters need to have a sword fight. And it's like, okay, that was dumb. Like, you just shouldn't have had a sword fight. Have them like argue. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, sword fights for the most part, I still enjoy quite a fair number of them. Some decent ones that I've seen in like the last year, you've got stuff like The Witcher has some pretty good sword fights.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I was watching that.
They've had some pretty good ones. And honestly, there's spinning stuff, and that doesn't really work. But it was very, very fun to watch. Really, really nice. There were some stuff from people will probably not be happy with me saying this, but like what is it, The King? Or the movie that was about Henry V that came out featuring Timothy Chalamet.
I don't know.
It's on Netflix too.
Sword fighting is actually
they had some sword fighting in there that I enjoyed. They had like a armored duel showdown. I enjoyed it. It told a story. Was probably not incredibly historically accurate, but it told a story and I enjoyed it. So those are two things that I recently off the top of my head that I've watched and I've gone, I like the sword fights in this because it was nice.
See, for me, I'm like, at this point, I can almost, the only action sequences I can almost only enjoy are like Marvel. So I'm just like, the dude's got a flying hammer, so I can just suspend all disbelief about everything and just, I'm like, whatever. Like, none of this obeys the laws of physics, so I can just enjoy it and I sit back. Whereas half the time when I'm watching something, I'm just like, that
kick was too slow.
Go that way. Yeah. Like, that would not work that way. Like, just some stuff that Hollywood has for ideas. I like when they use someone like Gina Carano, though, or something. Like, she did that action movie.
Haywire?
Yeah, that was so good. So like, and that was probably about the best fight choreography I've seen. Like, she throws, like, proper leg kicks into Ewan McGregor that are, like, I'm sure if that... I don't know if that was Ewan McGregor or like a stunt double, but whoever that was did not walk right for the rest of the day. Like, those are real leg kicks. You're like, oh, that's what would mess people up. And like, she's doing good jiu-jitsu and stuff. And it's like, it looks pretty incredible. I'm actually excited for... I don't know what the name of the movie is, but the
The movie, the trailer that you
the
posted?
dude that was from Boondock Saints. One of the dudes there, Sean
Flannery, I think.
Sean Flannery has a new movie. It's out on, I think you can get it on Amazon. He's a legit black belt. According to Henry Akins, he's a legit black belt. And apparently it's good. Some people we know have already seen it. And they said the jiu-jitsu actually looks, really real and good. So I'm kind of excited to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like when we're talking like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, 2 movies that really stood out to me. One was, and you guys may not like this, but I like it. It was Red Belt. It was a David Mamet film.
I know of it. Yeah.
Joel Giafor is the main character. He plays a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym owner, and stuff happens, and I thought it was a pretty great story. There's not a whole lot of fighting in it, but the fights that were there I enjoy. And this other one actually has it's the movie I think is called Flashpoint. It's a Chinese film featuring the guy who played Ip Man. From
Donnie Yuan or something like that. I don't know.
Donnie Yen.
Donnie Yen, yeah.
And he actually had he went through some MMA and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu training prior to that. And one of the the ending fight scene that lasts like 5 minutes. It was really, really impressive, and he was doing some fantastic transitioning between like an armbar to a triangle and some really, really, really smooth moves. And obviously it's been influenced a little bit because it was Hong Kong cinema kind of stuff. But I really enjoyed the fight scenes in that. I don't know where you can get that. I had to buy Red Belt from Hastings before it went down.
I'll throw one more movie out there, and I guess we should probably start to wrap up here. But my favorite inclusion of jiu-jitsu in a movie is not even Haywire, but Green Room.
Yes.
There's just one character in that can he can just do jiu-jitsu, and it's like that is what jiu-jitsu would look like if you actually had like really people fighting and stuff like that. Is he just handles people. Like it just comes up a couple times in the film where it's like guys decide to go hands on, and he's like, all right, now I can break your arm, like, and it's just like crack, and it's like that's pretty much what it would look like if you start going hands on with people that are actually trained, and I've had to give that experience to a number of people over the years, and usually I'm just like people see stuff and they're like, why do they tap? And that's usually the question I'll get at a party or something. I'm like, I'm gonna do this really slow, we're gonna show it to you, and then people are like, oh my god, like that would actually break my arm, like that isn't like theoretical, like I can feel my arm breaking, you're like, oh whoa, like and that so that's always kind of fun. But Green Room's, it's a good movie otherwise, but there's just that minor, it's really like a 5% inclusion in the film. It's just the one guy's like, he does jiu-jitsu, they just mention it that he does competitions, and just a couple times where people go hands on with him, and he just does what it looks exactly like what I would expect it to look like. There's it's not flashy, just it's like, oh yeah, that's what happened. So
oh god, so many movies. So like if we're talking about movies for sword fights, the one that everyone always recommends is The Duelists. And it's about these two, I think they're both French officers, but they're these two officers in like the Napoleonic era that they started dueling each other, and it's like the chronicles of their meetings, and I think they meet like 3 or 4 times throughout the movie, and it's actually really, really good, and I wish I could remember the names of the directors and the lead actors, because they're actually really good actors too, but The Duelist is the one that everyone recommends for like legitimate sword fighting, and if you just want to have a good time, Princess Bride, not a lot beats that sword fight, frankly,
but it's awesome. It's awesome. Conan the Barbarian, just throw that out there.
Hey,
amazing.
What I always laugh, fun fact about Conan the Barbarian, Arnold had to not lift as much on his chest so that he could actually hold a sword out in front of him.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, wow.
Like his chest was literally so big that he had to work that out way less so that it would reduce in size, just so he could hold a sword out in front of him.
That's hilarious. Oh, wow. That's so crazy.
Fun facts.
Yeah, that was back when he was all roided out and just gigantic. Like, he looks so crazy. Like, there's some of those scenes where he's just flexing with the sword, and it's like his muscles have muscles. Like, his muscles are growing and, like, could flex and lift something on their own. Like, like, my Well, anyways, Connor, it's good to have you on the show, and we'll put the links in the show notes, but just repeat them real quick for people at the end. Like, what was your email?
newbraunfels at academyofwma.com.
Okay.
And website's incredibly difficult. It's academyofwma.com.
academyofwma.com. All right. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.